Who touched my clothes? I love the red letters. They're just so unexpected. We are St. Paul Lutheran Church. Lutheran means free in Greek. Look it up. We are found at sba15.org. We're part of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. That's our statement and our body. We are pro grace, pro Bible, pro marriage, pro family, and pro life. And here at St. Paul, my goal as your pastor until I die or you chase me away with sticks is to make you a Psalms praying, Proverbs reading, red letter following Protestant Christian congregation of believers in Jesus Christ because he is risen. He is risen indeed. Alleluia. And you are also set apart for discipleship and giving as the kingdom of God. That's our stewardship program, quote unquote, which we just think on with those powerful words every week. All right, today, Mark chapter 5, two stories in a sandwich. And Jephthah thrown in because, oh my goodness, Jephthah, what a tale. And of course, a 12-year-old girl, give or take, in each story. But starting with those red letters, who touched my clothes? I've said before, some of you are here every week, some of you here, you come and go, you're visitors. What do you know that I've said before? I've said before that Mark is concerned more with Jesus' incarnation as a man, as an animal, as a guy, than the other gospels are. If you're going to like set them up on like a mat and have them wrestle for who's most in charge of this idea, Mark cares about the incarnation in ways that even John, the word became flesh and dwelt among us, is pretty powerful stuff. But even John doesn't pick up on give her some food, right? I'm gonna raise this sleeping slash dead slash was sick girl back to health. And yeah, no, she's got an empty stomach still, guys. Come on, think about it. You know, it's real life here. And that's all the way through Mark with all these throwaway lines. So who touched my clothes is not a throwaway line. There's like something potent here. Is connected perhaps to the transfiguration. Do you remember at the day of transfiguration when Jesus shines like the sun, when his hidden glory that he veils and doesn't use is allowed to burst through as the archetype of divinity forever from the Father in front of everybody? Yeah. What happens to his clothes that day? Well, they change too. They change too. And I'm not saying that, like, Shroud of Turin dot dot dot. I think chasing stories not from the Bible is about as much value to your life as chasing conspiracy theories, which may or may not provide some value sometimes to your life. I'm not sure about every relic that's out there. I'm not trying to put that idea in your head, though. Go look for the relics, the clothing of Jesus. I'm saying get close to Jesus. This is the value of this woman's insight. She just knows who he is. He doesn't even need him to smile. He doesn't even need him to look at her. She just needs to get close. She knows that when God is near and it's the true God, there's only good. Now, she's terrified after the fact because, well, she kind of did steal it with her prayers. And then that's the point. Jesus isn't really mad at her. Her terror is misbegotten. She's thinking the wrong thing. She's listening to the voice of the accuser in her head. She's listening to the devil in her heart. And Jesus said, no, you did exactly the right thing. You came to me in the prayer that you had. And it was like, get as close as I can right now. Please, Jesus, please, Jesus, please. And ooh, it happened. Jesus, like, I didn't even plan that one. It just happened. And there's more, just right in that moment with his humanity piece, like he feels the power go out from him. This is the Mark and secret answer. So I've talked about this a number of times, but we're in Mark all year. The Mark and secret, you can't ignore it. Repeatedly, Jesus says, don't tell anybody about me or what I'm doing. And all the liberal scholars say, why would he do that? It seems counterproductive. And my answer is because he was tired. Because he's a guy. After healing 30 people of their diseases, he needs some food. And he still hasn't talked to Peter about what they were arguing about on the road. He's got to do that still. And the Pharisees just accused him again. Will these guys leave me alone? No, they won't. And where do they show up? Where the miracles are? You can start to see at a certain point, he's got a mission to achieve, and popularity is not it. He just needs to achieve it. And he really wants to love people, which you can't do in a crowd very well. right? There's just too much going on, and private things are private. And so, how can he build a band of brothers while surrounded by chaos? That's the Markan secret. So, who touched my clothes is the incarnation. Is Jesus being a guy who's got power that he's only got so much of in a day because he veiled himself in his humility. And he feels this power go out from him, kind of against his will. But no, because it's never against his will. And he turns around, he says, "Who touched my clothes?" And you have this moment where you can hear that one of two ways. He can be kind of upset about it, right? Who touched my clothes? That's how I heard it when I was young and people preached it. I don't know if they meant it that way. That's how I took it for a long time. Like he was sort of like, "What? Who did that?" You know? And his disciples were like, "What are you talking about? You're in a crowd, dude. Come on." But I think he's more like, "Oh, I just healed somebody. I'd like to talk to that person. Who did that?" No, he actually cares about her. He's like, "No, no, you don't get the miracle without me. I'm coming along too with some words for you." Who touched my clothes? There's wisdom here in spades, and we're going to go line by line through it. But I want to set up the Jephthah thing just a touch before we dig in again too. So we heard the story of Jephthah, Judges 11, read this morning. And at the end of that story, Jephthah's rash vow leads to the death of his own around 12-year-old daughter. And the fact that we have the death of a daughter of Israel who is faithful for the entire circumstances of her death, no matter how you may feel about it, are filled with their faithful statements. Moses said this. That's what God said. We will continue to trust in God. Both Jephthah and his daughter do that. And God lets her die. And we say, "How terrible." And well, yes, it felt terrible, I'm sure. But was it finally then? What reward have they in paradise? I assure you, much. For they love not their lives even unto death, as the scripture teaches us to do. Uh, So, in this, I would like you to see from the beginning the restoration of this 12-year-old girl, Jairus' daughter, to life as the other side of Jephthah's daughter's death in the Old Testament, with God in heaven smiling over the whole thing, saying, "Y'all just don't even get it yet." Like when they die, they're just going to sleep. I can bring them back when I want to. Why would I bring them back to this vale of tears when I have a garden and a new heaven prepared for you new bodies? So if your witness forwards that truth by your death, what is that to you but joy and glory indeed? And thus, Jephthah's daughter, for a long time in Israel, was remembered with regularity for her glory and her faith. And as we put this 4-year lectionary together, should it take on roots and be elsewhere, that memory will return to the church. It's a good one, ladies. To love your God more than your man. Maybe never get one just because God said so. Who knows? Do you want one? Pray for one. The Lord loves marriage. He gives marriage. Okay, so Jephthah's daughter, counterpoint to what we're going to see as we pick up with verse 21 of chapter 5, where it says, "Now when Jesus had crossed over again by boat to the other side," not a lot of clarity there, but probably going back to Capernaum. Capernaum is on the southwest side of the Sea of Galilee or the Sea of Tiberias, the big water at the top of the map, if you ever look, inland sea of sorts. And the north side of it is completely pagan. They keep herds of pigs there, which you can't do as a Jew. You wouldn't want to. Ew, gross. Bacon, gross, right? That's their view. And on the southern side, again, you have more of the Jewish settlements, but these are northern Israel settlements, so they're not the same as you'd find down in Judea. They've had some impact from outside cultures on them, and there's a lot of Greek overlap in this area. But Capernaum is an international city for the times, and it's his home base, but it's also the place where he's so popular he can't go there very often anymore. Now, again, I'm assuming or I'm suggesting that the story is in Capernaum. It could be a different place where there is a synagogue on the southern shore of Galilee. There aren't that many. In fact, I did some research on this. There is, in fact, one ancient synagogue in Capernaum. And so it is likely that Jairus is the name of the man who was that synagogue leader at this time. And since the world is the way that it is, and people are the way they are. I'll share a bit more from that study. I used artificial intelligence to do the research for the study. I asked it about archaeological evidence of synagogues in Capernaum from the time of Jesus. How many synagogues have there been? And it told me there were two. I'm going to tell you this story because it shows you where artificial intelligence is awesome and where it's stupid. It said there's two. I said, oh, I keep listening to the thing. It says there's one built on top of another one. Oh, you mean there's one that they reconstructed in the 300s? Yes, that's correct. There's one synagogue in Capernaum. And I know that because certain computer tools today allow you to do research in ways that you needed a lot of books and libraries before, but they also still have typos and don't always do the math right. So it's not like it can take over the world at the moment. It's just a smart Google system, basically. That said, one synagogue in Capernaum, and the guy Jairus who's going to show up sounds like he's their leader, which is pretty neat. Right? Jesus is by the sea, though, right? The water, they're at the shore, the birds. Ah, what a beautiful place. And behold, verse 22, one of the rulers of the synagogue came, Jairus by name. His name means enlightened in Hebrew. It was a Greek speaking of a Hebrew word, enlightened or brought to light or bringer of light, which is pretty cool what's going to happen to him at this moment. And there's a twist here too. Okay, so this ruler, Jairus, who's been at this synagogue ruling since like Mark chapter 1, has therefore seen Jesus a number of times because Jesus has been through that synagogue in Mark a number of times. So did he believe? Did he always believe, or is now the moment with his daughter at home sick? And he's like, well, I'm watching all this. I'm going to go to the guy now. And I think there's more to this in the moment when he gets the messengers from his home. I think there's a lot of politics involved, but this guy Jairus again, he's becoming a Christian. It's an amazing moment. He's seen the light, and that's what his name means. And when he saw Jesus, notice he fell at his feet. This is not, hey buddy, can you help? Right? This is, I got nowhere else to go. This is, I think you're either a king or a god or something in between. As a Jew, not going to do this to anybody, generally speaking. You don't bow down to people unless they're a king, I guess. Right? So he's begging Jesus to at least see that he's got nothing. He's Job on the ash heap, right? He's beating his breast. He's got nothing left. Jesus, my little girl, my daughter. The word doesn't mean baby. So this is adolescent, right? But my little girl, about 12, lies at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her that she may be healed and she will live. A statement of great trust. It isn't if you can. Is do you think you can do something? I've heard these stories. It's I know who you are now. Again, where did that happen to this man? I don't know. I want you to imagine though he's a real guy. You're going to meet him someday in paradise. Uh, And his story is here so that you would have a story to go beside your own, not some wooden cutout or a cartoon character, but a real guy who faced a tragedy like few of us ever faced, frankly. How many of you have had your child at the point of death? Actually, I'd want to fall out of a tree and get a really bad concussion, swallow up the ice, scare me to death, right? But no, she wasn't even close to this. Not even close. So this man knows, and his conviction, Jesus, you can. That's what prayer is. It's not if, it's you can. Now, thy will be done means maybe you won't because you got better reasons. That's true. But here he says it just in what I do it, Jesus. And more so, I know your hand is the key. It's the hand of Jesus Christ he calls for, not his voice. That's fascinating and beautiful, especially given what's going to happen to his hands on the cross. Perhaps you've heard the song, he's got the whole world in his hands. And we've talked about how knowledge is in the hand. It's the word hand. And so the hands of Jesus are just so much more than an idea. They're a thing that when his hands touch you, the clean rubs off. You get to the clothes, it's good enough. Come lay your hands on her that she may be healed and live. Does he think she can be raised from the dead? Is there a fear she might die and it will be too late? We're going to see that in a moment too. I think it's normal for us Christians to assume that because one miracle, all the miracles, but in his life, that's not how it is yet. Nobody raises dead people. That's not how it is. Jesus, you need to get to her now before she dies. That is the way that the world sees everything. Every day you live, Jesus, I need it now, before. And he's like, I got this. Be that here. Yeah. Jesus went with him. A great multitude throngs about him, right? He just can't get away from the crowd, and they're in a city, a fish market, etc. And now we shift the story. I have not talked about this much. We've been in Mark nearly a whole year, and I haven't pointed out that if you just open Mark and read it and try to map kind of chapters without looking at the chapter numbers, you'll see there's a revolving pattern, which is a story starts, a new story comes in the middle, and then the story finishes. A new story starts, a story comes in the middle, and then the story finishes. And it rolls forward in these pairs, sandwiches, story sandwiches, all the way through the book. And it's really clear right here. You got this sick girl, you're going to have this bleeding woman, and then you're back to the sick girl dead raised, right? Story sandwich. And that little bit of the sermon is just so when you read Mark, like he's always doing that constantly. And it why? Well, they go together, like Ram Ding Dong and all this stuff, right? It's peanut butter and jelly. Yeah. It makes sense when you read it all together and let it be true. Yeah. So then from the woman who's going to die at a young age and the healer on the way, now, verse 25, a certain woman had a flow of blood for 12 years. Something in our society we don't talk about exactly, but it's very there also. Everyone kind of knows that women have a flow of blood regularly, right? See how weird that is for me to say that in church? But this is not that. This is that on some extreme level. This is that on it's not stopping. You're hemorrhaging. Now, what's really going on inside? What says next, verse 26 is something. She had suffered many things from many physicians. It's not the doctors couldn't help, is the doctors made it worse. I, Maybe you've been there. I have. It's quite a thing, the physicians. And in the ancient world, there is a awareness that the line between magic, snake oil, and actual doctors is you should listen carefully to whoever's talking to you. That's how the ancients would have seen it. And just because there's a sign that says pharmakeia on the outside of the building doesn't mean they're not selling poison. But maybe that person knows the herbs really, really well and can help you, get rid of your stomach ache. Like that's how it was. And I suggest that's how it is. That we're not quite as unified as we like to think in most of our systems. And so, if you are suffering many things at the hands of your physicians, you don't have to. Just consider, just consider. They might not know what they're talking about. And public service announcement, our current federal government's agencies regarding to healthcare, nutrition, and otherwise are revealing a great deal of corruption over the last 30 years about the news you've been told about what is good for you. So you might look into that because things you've been told are bad for you might be good for you, like salt and fat. Right? And things you've been told are good for you might be bad for you, like margarine and soy. Right? But you got to look into that yourself. And that's not my job. Except for that the text does say, look, people lie and say they know what they're talking about and promise wild things. So beware of that. She spent all she had and was no better. I know people who do the same thing in churches. They go from a revival to another revival, trying to get that miracle. And want those crutches to be thrown away once and for all. Or perhaps they want to quit smoking, something like that. But after all the money they throw at it, all the tricks, all the gadgets, all the technical things, all the little ways the philosophers have said, this will work, we promise, I've done it, right? What's left? No money. And she grew worse, it says, grew worse. Verse 27, when she heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. She's like the Syrophoenician woman who says, can the crumbs come to the dogs, please? Right? I won't presume, Jesus, that I deserve your attention. But I know the dust you walk on is cleaner than what's in my heart. And so if I can just touch your clothes, so beautiful. And again, I suggest to you, this is prayer. I know it's hard. I know you don't feel like it. I know it sounds like it's kind of weak, in fact. But if you can just reach up to him and say, please, it will change you that moment, even if you don't get specifically what you were asking for. And the more you say please, and the louder you say please, I suggest the more likely he gives you enough of an answer that you're settled. Again, it may not be what you wanted, because what we usually want is money, power, and everything in control, like it's heaven right here. And he's kind of like, guys, read the book. That's not how it works. Yeah. But when it comes to confidence, peace in the heart, calm in the soul, certainty in your relationships, well, those things he gives in spades. But if you're chasing the other stuff, it's hard to see those things. Hard to get the family when you're running out the door to be productive. Yeah. That's a real challenge there. She prays. I'm asking you, believe in your prayers. For she said, if only I might touch his clothes, I will be made well. We've done that enough, I think. Verse 29, immediately the fountain of her blood was dried up. I mean, what? How? Miracle, miracle. Without science, without knowledge, not. I'd suggest this miracle was just so beautiful. Like whatever was going on inside her, like the way your elbow here, I got the scab on my elbow. The internet can see the scab on my elbow. It's been there like 2 weeks. Got my wife really worried for a little bit because I didn't take care of it very well. And but it healed itself. Look at that. Like it used to be bloody, and now it's not. Now there's skin there. Well, how'd that happen? Well, Jesus, that's how. He built it to do that. Okay, so with her, it just kind of just did it. It just did it all come back together. What an amazing moment. And she felt it inside of her. I mean, what kind of pain she'd been in, and it went away. What do you want him to do for you? Really? I'm gonna stay silent for a second. Think about it. What do you want him to do for you? Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that power had gone out, turned around in the crowd and said, who touched my clothes? Right? He felt it and he wants to, I am going to talk to this person. Where are you? I, a little snickerdoodle. I'm going to catch you. Right. But his disciples said to him, and they always scoff. That's kind of their MO. What are you talking about, Jesus? You see the multitude thronging. You say, who touched me? You know, when you're confused by a wise man, don't scoff at him. That's what they're doing. They're confused by a wise man. They're following this guy. They think he's the son of God. And constantly he says something like, nah. But if you think the guy's wise, at least listen and ponder before you argue. We all need a solid dose of that in our lives. Verse 32, he looks around. He's not going to listen to her or excuse me, to them when they're complaining. He looks around. He's going to find her who had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what had happened, came, fell down, told the truth. Right? She gets to see him eye to eye. That's better. That's better than the healing. Oh, goodness. Abraham longed for it, and so do I. He said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace, be healed of your affliction. And it all sounds great. And that very moment, some guy from the ruler's house shows up and says, your daughter is dead. Oh, nice bedside manner, fella. Well, you really came in good there, didn't you now? I think this guy's from the other factions. I think he's like a Pharisee plant. He's trying to get Jairus to feel like crap and stop Jesus from coming. Maybe not. Maybe it's just the messenger, right? But what he says is so rude and so unthoughtful to Jairus. Oh my goodness, it's just ridiculous. He says, your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher? How about, may I help you? Or can I hold you? Or come with me? Why trouble the teacher? Well, clearly he doesn't believe in resurrection, right? That's evident. I said that earlier. They don't see the resurrection as a possibility. It's already over. But again, what's this doing to Jairus now? I mean, he's coming in faith, and his friend, his servants, just dismantling his hope in front of Jesus. And Jesus immediately is like, hey, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Only believe. And when you don't get your prayers answered, don't be afraid. Only believe. We're walking toward a better land. If it isn't in this life, it'll be in the next. Ask for it. If it isn't in this life, it'll be in the next. If it's made of gold, silver, or anything else, you want it, you'll get it in the next life. And you'll get ready for it in this life. Do not be afraid. Only believe. And he permitted no one to follow him, right? Mark in secret. Peter, James, John, the brother of James, James gets mentioned twice. We know less about him than any of them. Then he came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, saw the tumult, those who wept and wailed loudly, quite a thing to see people praying to God publicly with their grief the way the ancient world did, screaming and shouting and just letting it out. And then they move on with their life. I think there's some wisdom there. I'm not saying we should all get together and scream at funerals. I'm saying crying is good for you. Let it happen. If it happens, don't feel like you should be ashamed. Jesus wept. It's a way of releasing the problem to God physically. So that's what they're all doing, right? And he says, though, why? Why are you making this commotion about this child who is not dead but sleeping? And again, they scoff at him. And who is he? Well, he's just a rabbi at this point, yet he's got crowds around him because he's a wonder worker. They come to him to lay his hands on the girl for healing, but they don't think he can raise her from the dead. And he says she's not even really dead. You guys don't understand death. And ponder that again and bring it forward to your life and your grave, which is going to come for you someday. And I want you to believe on that day, you're just going to fall asleep. You're not going to die. You're just going to fall asleep. And it's going to be the best rest you ever tasted. Have you ever gone to one of these surgeries where they're like, here, we're going to put this in your arm, count backwards from 10. You're like 10, 9, and you're done. And then you wake up 4 hours later. You kind of wish you could have stayed asleep. Anybody ever have that one? Right? That's the rest of heaven coming for you. And it won't be over when you wake up. You'll be glad to wake up. You'll be ready for that day. And every death is this. And he says that in this moment, she's only sleeping. They ridicule him, verse 40. He puts them outside. Fine. You don't get to see the miracle then. Took the father, the mother, those who were with him, enters where the child is lying. Verse 41 takes the child by the hand. Notice the touch again. The touch, the human touch. Takes the child by the hand and says to her, Talitha, that's the little girl part of it. And Kumi is rise up. I've always thought Talitha would be a lovely girl's name. I never managed to get it on one of my daughters, but if we ever are blessed and we're not quite out of those woods yet, it would hang in there for a contender. Little girl, Talitha. It's a beautiful name. Kumi, rise up, resurrect, come to life, stand, right? Verse 42, immediately the girl rose and walked, for she was 12 years of age. Have you ever seen a 12-year-old girl like go from shy private moment to they open up and then like it all comes out? Anybody? Give me. I won't go on if no one's ever seen a 12-year-old like actually just start talking crazy. No. They'll go nuts. They'll never stop, right? And you're like, okay, okay, okay. So just imagine she's on fire right now, and not like for Jesus per se, but like when that girl goes, she's doing it. And Jesus says, make her sit down and eat some food. The kids don't always know what they need until you give it to them. Everyone's overcome with amazement. And again, his concern for her stomach is not a throwaway to close the story. This girl's going to die someday. She's dead now. I don't know where they buried her, but I'm going to assume from this that she's a Christian by result of all of this. And so she's there as this story, both to remind us of the hope that has come to us for our children when they die, for Jephthah's daughter and that story from the past. And for this entire nation, country, place, neighborhood, world that we're in right now, filled with so many people who are afraid of death, so afraid that they're grasping everything they have here with everything they can, while it evidently is filled with rust and wind. And then they're despairing, they're bothered, they don't know why they feel the way that they feel. And you, Christians, are different. You're not perfect. You're not without despair or futility or any of those things, but you have an understanding that rises above it. On the cross of Jesus Christ, in the power of his hands, pierced, and then handing you the meal in a few moments. In Jesus' name, amen.